Welcome everybody to another edition of the Wrestling Heroes and Insiders Podcast, aka The Whip Show. You know what it is. I am Deshaun Whip Dog Whipple, and I'm with my Conrad Thompson of the wrestling world. You know what it is. Talk to him.
It's devastating, Daryl Pace, and I'm not in the command center today. I'm in the studio today. I'm getting some stuff.
You done ran out the command center, man. Why? Because we got a special guest today.
We're getting some
command center. You want to go to the studio because you know everything this man has done. And it's funny. I'm looking at everything this brother has done. I don't even know if I have enough letters and words to put in the caption for this episode. This man was the winner of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's Rock the Promo YouTube competition. This man was the third runner-up on WWE's Tough Enough. This man is a ring announcer. This man is the host of HoodSlam. This man was the voice of the WWE 2K19 wrestler, My2k Player wrestler. And now he's even working something more important. He's working with the Black Lives Matter, and he's taking that all over the world. Can you guys give it up to, as a wrestler, they call him Broseph Joe Brody, but we give it up to Mr. A.J. Kirsch. What's going on, man?
My God, right now what's going on is I just hope to be able to live up to that introduction. That was spectacular. Thank you so much for raising the bar impossibly high for me today. Thank you.
Not a problem at all. So how you been doing, man? I mean, a lot of the quarantine, the stay-at-home orders have been lifted a little bit. So how are you been feeling, man?
Yeah, I don't know. I have my good days and my bad days. Obviously, I miss performing on shows. I miss hosting HoodSlam in Oakland. I miss doing commentary for Major League Wrestling. I still have that itch to perform. And I don't know that that itch is ever going to go away. And with each passing day, I get a little bit more antsy. And that has not been easy to deal with because for a long time, for my entire adult life, in fact, wrestling has been, for the most part, my number one priority. And to be away from that right now is, on one hand, yeah, it kind of sucks. But on the other hand, it has made me okay with being away from wrestling because I've kept myself busy. I've been able to find ways to keep money coming in, which is nice. But also there are far more important matters at hand than the first show back for HoodSlam or MLW or Best of the West or anything else right now. And I think this is a really pivotal opportunity to take the time and effort that I would otherwise be putting into those shows and putting them behind causes that I believe in.
That's what's up, man. And that's a really good thing that you brought up. And we're going to touch on everything as much as we can.
Let's do it.
One thing I brought up on one of my Facebook posts is asking people, what have they learned or how have they progressed as a person in these 2 to 3 months being down? You touched on a little bit, but let's talk about that. How do you think you progressed? What have you done differently?
So one of the big things for me is I am a man of the gym. I love working out. I literally work out every day. I don't feel like myself unless I get some kind of physical activity in, whether that's for me, prior to shelter in place, every day that was waking up and going to the gym. It didn't matter how early I had to be up. It was something that in my mind just kind of had to happen. Now, obviously, gyms have not been a thing for about 3 months right now. And so I kind of panicked in the early going, just being like, oh my God, if I can't go to the gym, how am I going to take care of myself physically? And not just for the sake of lifting weights or getting my cardio in, but like for me, the taking care of myself physically is crucially important to my mental health, to my emotional health, and how it just blows me away how I continue to learn how closely the three are related. So not only was it like, oh my God, how am I going to get my workout in? But it was also, oh my God, how is this going to affect my mental state going into these unforeseen circumstances that have enveloped the entire world? So I was in a bit of panic mode, but as I soon realized, like, the gym is obviously not the only way that you can wake up and put your body to use. And so I started doing these at-home, zero equipment body weight workouts. I started going on more bike rides, more hikes. just, going to the park and hitting the pull-up bars or the dip bars and just finding ways to make a workout happen without the gym. Because again, I was so, I don't want to say addicted, but it was such a critical part of my routine that I almost made it part of my identity, that I was the guy that wakes up and goes to the gym. And if I didn't have that, I was like, well, Christ, now what happens with that part of me? And so one of the things that I learned was I'm far more adaptable than I think I gave myself credit for. And I've learned to have a little bit more breathing room in my routines and be open to alternatives. And in many ways, the alternatives that I've sought out are working even better than the gym did. I'm in the best shape of my life right now. My diet's dialed in. I'm super motivated. And I didn't think that would happen without the gym, but lo and behold, it has.
Nice, nice. Well, as you talk about the mental health and working out, being together mentally and physically, that leads me to somebody you worked with. Watch the segue. You were in the Rock YouTube promo battle. Correct. I saw it. I watched every episode, and dog, I voted for you. You were amazing. But I gotta ask you, what made you even try out to that? And speaking of being mentally focused, physically and everything, that's one thing The Rock is all about. If you follow his motivation on YouTube, on Instagram, and all that. So when you saw somebody knowing how hard you go and seeing what he does, how did it feel to meet him, be a part of that contest, and then just actually connect with him, man?
Yeah, that was an unbelievable experience. And, if you're unfamiliar with what we're talking about, if you just go to youtube.com/The Rock, it's the first thing, it was the project that he used to launch his YouTube channel back in 2016. So it's like all the way at the beginning is that stuff. And, it was kind of the same mentality that I had when I entered Tough Enough back in 2011. I was just kind of like, you know what? Somebody has to be on that show. Somebody gets to be in that position. And I think it should be me. Why not me? Like, I'm never going to know unless I give it a shot. And at the time of Rock the Promo, I realized that my contributions to pro wrestling are more valuable behind a microphone than they are in the ring. And I was confident enough in my ability to cut a promo and confident enough in the Broseph Joe Brody character that I've already done for years at HoodSlam that, you know what, I feel like I could enter this thing. I feel like I might have a shot. And, the powers that be at $7 Productions and the folks behind his YouTube channel, luckily for me, they thought the same thing. And then after getting the nod from, let's see, who was it? Kurt Angle, Christian, Cody Rhodes, Mick Foley, Edge, and then, of course, The Rock himself after cutting the final promo in front of him in person, I was the first and as of now the only Rock the Promo champion. And to get that kind of stamp of approval from somebody who is as focused, as motivated, as motivating, and as driven as Dwayne The Rock Johnson, not just as somebody who has made himself a legend in pro wrestling, but is now arguably the biggest star in the world, it was a thrill that I'll never, ever forget, and I'll always be very grateful for.
Nice, nice. Well, I gotta ask you this too then, man. Now, I also, I see all the work you're doing, and I know the character, Broseph Joe Brody. And people are shocked of what you're doing right now because you're so articulate. Are you really far from the Broseph character? Seriously, man, tell the truth.
There's some blending happening there. There's a little bit of blending. You keep hearing that the best characters in pro wrestling are shreds of that person's personality, but amped up to the nth degree. And, I hate to throw myself into a cliche, but that's absolutely true. I am a dedicated gym rat, as we've already covered. I went to college at Chico State, which was a notorious party school. Was never in a frat, but I was around frat culture all the time. For a couple of years there, I was a bouncer in the douchiest neighborhood in San Francisco. So I was around that culture all the time. And people still think I'm joking when I tell them that I genuinely, unironically, shamelessly love Nickelback. I love Nickelback. And so I just figured if I put all those things together, but put them in a character that comes off as very toxic and very arrogant and very obnoxious, like the first thing I do when I walk through the curtain is I spray Axe body spray on myself. And by the time that happens, the crowd knows immediately, you know what? Screw this douchebag. And that's exactly what I'm going for.
Nice, man. But then those aren't the only shows you've been on. You've done reality television besides Tough Enough. I saw a clip. I don't want to go too far into it.
Oh no, tell me about the clip. What'd you see?
All right, if you're sure. I mean, well, I'll just say this. You have a very nice body, if you will.
Oh no, I'm flattered. Thank you.
I'll leave it at that. And the young lady did as well. With that being said, could you tell us a little bit about that show, man, and how you got picked up for that, and how did that scene happen?
Sure. So for those who might not know, he's talking about Dating Naked on VH1, which is a reality show that is exactly what it sounds like. It is a dating show that took place in Panama, and all of us were naked. And that was just another thing. When I got the casting call for that, I was just kind of like, that seems like such a ridiculous, like preposterous adventure. But you know what? It sounds kind of fun, and somebody has to be on that show. And you know what? I think it should be me. And so I, just took that same attitude to the casting people at VH1. Luckily for me, they thought the same way. And, it wasn't really until I was on the island and like taking off my clothes for the first time that I was like, oh my God, like this is really going to happen. But what's really funny about that, and I never thought that this would be the case, but like coming back from that show, I really did feel way more comfortable in my own skin, because like at that point, once you're naked in front of, 20 people with cameras and microphones and clipboards and everybody who's trying to shoot a television show, it's like, there really is no going back for that. So you may as well just own it. You may as well just own it at that point. And that's the kind of, when I met the woman that I was doing the show with, it was like, here's mine, there's yours, who cares? Like, let's have some fun with this.
So it was a shoot. Like there wasn't, even though they blurred it out, it wasn't you really had drawers on. And
that was a shooty shoot, cuzzy. That was 100% lived up to the title of that show. Absolutely.
Wow.
It was a good time though. I'm not gonna lie, it was a good time. I regret nothing.
Now moving forward, I know you, because I watch your seminars and everything, and we'll talk about your seminars as well, because we definitely want to plug that. But
Thank you.
You've done some extra work with WWE as well.
Yep.
You went against Mr. Brodus Clay in one of your matches.
Sure did.
Also went against Heavy Machinery. Now, how did you first get booked on your extra matches?
Well, the Brodus Clay thing was shortly after Tough Enough. WWE was coming back to San Jose, and they knew from Tough Enough that I was a San Francisco Bay Area kid. I live in Berkeley right now, but as they normally do whenever they go to a town, and I don't know if this is going to change after COVID-19, but whenever they go to a town, they bring in local wrestlers to play security guards or EMTs, or bring in a couple jobbers to get squashed to put somebody over. And with Brodus Clay, that was my first taste of being extra talent with WWE. And I've probably been working with them like a half dozen times since. And of course, most recently, and probably most famously, I guess, myself and somebody who I've actually kind of grown in wrestling with, Dave Dutra, were picked to get clobbered by Heavy Machinery. And at the time, of course, they gave us those cardboard belts, and we were the Yellow County Tag Team Champions, which in my book means WWE officially recognized myself and Dave Dutra as a champion. So I'm cool with that. I've got WWE champion on my resume. I just put it at the very bottom that it's Yellow County Tag Team Champion. But it was a lot of fun. You know what I mean? Like the first time I was super nervous. I like barely made eye contact with everybody. I was very yes sir, no sir, shaking everybody's hand. And it's changed a lot in the last 9 years. So it was a lot more relaxed. Obviously, I had done it a number of times, so I kind of knew what I was getting into. But it was a fun little moment. And especially because my mom was at both of them, and she was always very encouraging of my dreams to chase WWE. So to have my mom see me perform in a WWE ring was really special to her, and that made it even more special for me.
Now, I was raised back in the day of Road Wars and stuff like that, where the extra talent got killed. Did they protect you a little bit?
I have nothing but positive things to say about Brodus Clay and Heavy Machinery. They took great care of us. And that's the thing too. I'm like thinking about it as you mentioned it. Like they only put me in there when it was against these freaking monsters, and I was happy about that, because if they're that strong, they're going to be able to protect you. Even if you slip a little bit this way or that way, they're going to take care of you. So like, I have the utmost respect for Brodus Clay and Heavy Machinery for taking great care of myself. And I'm sure Dave Dutra, when we faced Heavy Machinery, in fact, I ran into Brodus Clay a year or two ago at the Cauliflower Alley convention in Vegas. And, you know, he remembered me and thanked me for making him look good. And he didn't have to do that, but it was really sweet of him for him to do that.
That's what's up, man. And I do this to everybody that's been an extra talent that's been on the show, because back in my day, I was an extra talent as well once. Could you tell people how good catering is? Like the
best catering in the world, my God. And they keep the same catering folks with them on the road. Like they are there at every town WWE goes to. I think they just live on the road with WWE at this point. Like the catering is the absolute best. And that's something else that I was super nervous about. It's like, first time, I'm just like, are we allowed to like go back and get catering? Is that okay? And they're like, yeah, eat. It's what it's there for. And so, you know, you're not necessarily prepared for this when you go into catering, but it's like, you know, there's everybody you're seeing on TV, but this is when you have to remember that because you're backstage as somebody who's working for WWE, even if for that day or two, you're a professional. This is not the time to mark out and ask for a picture or an autograph or something, because that's going to get your ass sent home real quick. That's going to tell them that you are not ready to be on the other side of the barricade just yet.
Well, speaking of that, I think it's the perfect time for Daryl's special question of the episode. Daryl, hit him.
That's right. That's right. We always ask about the mark out moments. So you just touched on it. So we'll throw it in there now. You're in catering or you're in one of these events and you're a wrestling fan growing up, right? So, I mean, you're trying to hold it back, but who are you marking out for, like an inside going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm sitting next to X person?
Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman's at the top of the list. And part of the reason I say Paul Heyman is just because this most recent time when I was at WWE, which was a little over a year ago now, he had seen one of the promos that I cut at HoodSlam. In fact, fun story, I was in full drag as Tinkerbell, and I called myself Tinkerbro. And it was just a few months after our current president had taken office. It was actually the first show after he had taken office. And so I kind of cut this anti-xenophobic promo that was just like, here at HoodSlam, we don't care what color you are, where you come from, how much money you make, who you like to have sex with, how you identify, just that all are welcome here at HoodSlam. And Heyman saw it on Twitter, started following Broseph on Twitter. So he and I have kind of been in touch over the last couple of years. So this was the first chance I really had to like sit with him at catering and just pick his brain. And we had a really fun conversation. But at the same time, as somebody who realized that, like I said, my contributions to wrestling are far more valuable behind a microphone than in a ring, as he and I are having this conversation, I'm still just like, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm chatting with Paul Heyman at catering at WWE. Like, those moments are the moments that I, you know, when looking back and reflecting on my career, I'm just like, those are the ones that mean really just have a special place in my heart.
Nice. Well, with that being said, how did you end up being part of WWE 2K19, man? I know Austin Aries did it once, but how did you get a part of that?
So after Tough Enough, WWE was still the goal, and I wanted to make myself as valuable an asset as possible to WWE, because if you're a member of their roster, you got to be doing, you got to be able to do interviews and guest spots on TV shows or voiceovers or movies or whatever the case is. You got to be ready for that. So I signed with a local talent agency here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they started sending me on auditions for acting gigs and commercials and voiceovers. So I got an audition for a voiceover role for a project that was not called WWE 2K19. In fact, I've been asked not to share the working title of the project, so I'm not going to, but it was a wrestling related project. And so I was like, oh, this is my jam. Like, I've got background in this for years. I know, everybody in and out of wrestling. So I think I'll have a good shot at it. Again, somebody's going to land this project. I think it should be me. So did the audition, felt good about it, didn't hear back for like a little over a week or so. And usually by then I had already written off the project because it usually takes 2 or 3 days from your audition to hear back. If you get the project, you'll hear back. If you didn't, you'll never hear from them again, which is where the phrase, don't call us, we'll call you comes from. But eventually I got an email from somebody at 2K saying, hey, we saw your audition, we loved it, and working title is not actually working title. It's the My Career mode in WWE 2K19, and we'd like to invite you to play the main character. And I lost it. I was like in my car at the time, checking emails at a red light. I immediately turned on AC/DC, just cranked it all the way up, rolled the windows down. It was just like, I cannot believe this is happening right now. This is the growing up playing video games and growing up a wrestling. There it is. There it is. Growing up playing video games and growing up a wrestling fan, it truly was a dream gig. It was a dream job. And like every time I talk about it, I'm still in a little disbelief that it actually happened, which again, like those are the moments that I just will treasure forever. I was so grateful to be a part of it.
Nice, man, nice. Well, now you're doing seminars.
Yep.
You're helping some of the young talent. I know you just did one last weekend. How often do you do that? And what made you start doing that as well?
So the seminars that I do on Zoom were kind of born out of finding ways to stay busy during shelter in place, finding ways to keep money coming in during shelter in place. And I realized that like my career, not just in wrestling, but in acting and voiceovers and fitness and mental health. And I just realized that I have a lot of experience that I think other people would find useful. And so I've done 4 seminars on Zoom, one covering the art of the promo in pro wrestling and public speaking in general, how to be a more confident public speaker. I did one that was a crash course on health and fitness, like overall wellness, diet, exercise, supplements, mental health, things like that. And then I took the mental health part of that seminar and made it its own seminar because I don't think enough people talk about mental health nearly enough. There's still a stigma that surrounds even the term mental health. There's a stigma that surrounds therapy. And so I'm trying to kind of break that stigma a little bit and be like, it's okay to talk about your feelings. Everybody has them. We'll all be a lot happier if we get more comfortable talking about our feelings, and we'll get better at how we process those feelings. And then just this past Saturday, I did a seminar on wrestling for television in WWE and MLW from the perspective of wrestlers, referees, and broadcasters. And if anybody's interested in picking those up, you can. Obviously, the seminars themselves have already passed, but since I recorded them on Zoom, you can still pick up the link to the video on YouTube, which is private, by the way, so you do need to like hit me up if you want it. But you also get an audio download so that you don't need the YouTube app open if you want to listen, just listen to the seminar. So if you're interested in any of those, find me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's all at AJ Kirsch, which is AJKIRSCH. Shoot me a DM. My DMs are open, and I'll be happy to hook you up.
Nice. Well, with that being said, let's touch on something a little even more serious that you've been getting into. The Black Lives Matter movement. Like I said, I follow you on Facebook. I see what you're doing. Why is it such an important thing to you? Because I see how hard you go, and I wanted you to know this from me right now. I love your energy. I see what you're doing out there. And you have no problem going pretty hard and letting people that don't agree with it, let them know what it is. What made you be like that? And what's going on, man? I mean, I'm glad you are, but why?
Right. Racism is wrong. End of story. Why is this so hard? Why is this so hard? This is why I go so hard at people who are just can't fucking get it. Excuse me, I just swore. I don't know if I can swear or not. It just staggers my imagination that it's 2020 and we're still having this conversation. And I'm a white man. I am pretty privileged. And it's never been more clear to me how privileged I am being a white man. And it's appalling to me that, and I'm almost also like kind of embarrassed that it took me this long to really understand the discrepancy in rights and freedoms and expectations between white people and black people. And I'm like, at this point, America has become the country equivalent of never meet your heroes, right? Because you see somebody as one thing, but then you meet them and you get to know them and be like, oh, you're full of shit. Like, it's never been okay, but now it's just so transparent and it's so blatantly obvious what's happening here. In fact, I posted this on my Facebook earlier today. I saw a sign on Instagram, like somebody took a picture of a sign that said, racism is so American that when you protest it, people think you're protesting America. Yeah. And it's disgusting how true that is. And it's never been okay, but it's really not okay anymore now with as clear as it is with George Floyd in that video that came out. And now I think Will Smith had the quote where he's like, racism isn't getting worse, it's getting filmed. That's the only difference. This is happening everywhere. It's been happening forever. And the fact that it is such a struggle to put a stop to it is just disgusting. And to see how much the United States depends on institutionalized racism and how much they depend on the prison system and how much they depend on people of color being fed into the prison system. And just the more I learn, the more appalled I am that it's gotten to this point. And I do not have the patience for anybody who tries to justify how this is okay anymore. I just don't have the fucking patience for it. And I can't even imagine how you feel as Black men having to grow up with this. Like, and again, me being a white man, I'm just like, it was never this clear to me until quite recently. And I think that speaks to my privilege as a white man. I can see it and I can admit that I'm privileged. And I think, I don't know, I'm just, this is something that just should not be. And I'm willing to devote my time and attention and effort until it's something that is no longer a thing.
For me, I appreciate, people, like you and people, around the world that are becoming active, right? I mean, I think part of it was, we're all trapped, we're all quarantined, we're all basically forced. One of the main conduits of energy was social media, right? Facebook, right. Instagram, everybody's on there all day. And so some of the messages, the things you might see and look the other way, you're kind of thrown into it because I have nothing else to do. And so, people like you are seeing this stuff and going, hey, you know what, enough is enough. I'm tired of it. I mean, when we had Black Lives Matter marches in China, where I'm sure there's some Black people, but I don't know where they are. In China, it's just like, this is amazing. Like, it's amazing right. to me. So it's very appreciative of people like you, taking a stance.
Oh, God, I'm again, proud to do it and a little embarrassed that I didn't do it sooner.
And we understand, man, but like I said, sometimes it takes time. Like you said, you might not have even seen it because you might have thought everything was straight up and down. It was even, but I'm glad that you do notice now, man. And I'm also appreciative of you using your platform because like I said, I see your post. You have no problem. Like, I'll give away a quote unquote fan if they don't understand what it is. You know what I'm saying?
They can unfollow me, they can block me, they can fuck right off forever for as far as I'm concerned. Like, I do not mind losing followers. Like, why? So they won't buy my t-shirt? Like, who cares? Like, the followers that I've lost, they are completely inconsequential to me. The followers that I've gotten because of how loud and vocal that I've been about this, those are the people that I want, like, paying attention to what I'm doing. I'm not on social media to change anybody's mind. Those are conversations that need to happen in person and like, there's no way to change everybody's mind on social media, but I am using social media to be clear about where I stand and why I take that stance. And again, I literally cannot fathom how people can defend racism. My brain shorts out. I'm just like, how is this okay to you? How? Like, explain this to me. There's no explanation that will make racism or judging anybody on the color of their skin or who they like to have sex with or anything else. There's no way that you can explain that to me in a way that makes it make sense. It's just fundamentally wrong.
That part, I totally agree. You hit the nail on the head. There's nothing else for us to say. You hit the nail on the head. Man, do me a favor. I want you to shout out, because I saw what you're doing with the pro wrestling tees and how you're donating the money. Because I want you to shout that out right quick, where they could get the shirts, what type of shirts, and what the donations will go to, the funds.
Right. I appreciate you bringing that up. So when this was all just starting to boil up, I was like, you know, how can I use my platform to like do some good, not just speaking out, but also raising some money for some organizations that support Black Lives Matter. So I had a friend of mine design some ECW-based BLM shirts. One is BLM with the white with the barbed wire across it, says Black Lives Matter across the top. One of them is the classic BLF&M, a spoof of ECF and W. And then there's the BLF&M, and on the back, there's a red hashtag that says Black Lives Matter. So there's 3 designs to choose from, one of which is double-sided. I'm donating 100% of my cut to the Black Lives Matter organization. And again, on a whim, I was just like, you know what? I wonder if Pro Wrestling Tees would be willing to match that. So I shot them an email, and they were like, you know what? We'll do that. So 100% of the proceeds from these shirts will be going to Black Lives Matter. We've sold, I think, around 220 shirts, which, forgive me if I get the math wrong on this, but it's right now it means about $3,000 going to Black Lives Matter. You can get them right now by searching Broseph Joe Brody on Pro Wrestling Tees, but I also bought the URL Bro Wrestling Tees, so you can just plug in Bro Wrestling Tees, Tees, into your web browser. It'll take you right to my page. They're the first shirts right across the top, and as it says in the description, 100% of the proceeds from each shirt will go to the Black Lives Matter organization. They're available in men's and women's shirts, t-shirts, tank tops, and a whole lot more, from extra small to 5XL, by going to browrestlingtees.com.
Nice, man. We will have that. I'll make sure I get that link up on our Facebook page and Instagram.
Thank you.
People can get hyperlinked right to that, man. And I just want you to know, I'm really loving this. I tell people all the time, the protests and all that, I'm loving them. They're good. But what it's really doing is starting the conversation. That's right. Phase 1. Now we can start going to phase 2, 3, and 4. We opened our eyes. Now we can straight talk about it, man. But since we're talking about stuff, if you don't mind, let's talk about something else that's been going on in wrestling here recently. Hashtag speaking out.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have to go too deep, but I've been around the wrestling business 20 years myself, man.
There's a lot of ugliness coming out right now. There's a lot of ugliness coming out. And it's weird that this is all, I mean, speaking out, Black Lives Matter, like there's a lot of just ugliness in general that's just kind of bubbling to the surface. And I don't know if COVID-19 has something to do with that, where it's just like, it's changed our lives in ways so that all of this has just been brought to light. But we're doing a lot of things wrong in wrestling, with how we're with Black Lives Matter, with police brutality. Like there's just a lot needs to change. And I think it's been that way for quite some time. And I think we're just in a position right now where we have to face it. We have to face this ugliness, and things need to change. As far as speaking out goes, there needs to be accountability. And it's weird, like there are parallels between, and I don't want to like merge two dumpster fires here, with the ugliness that is racism, the ugliness that is, the behavior that has sparked speaking out. But like, there needs to be accountability. There is no accountability right now. And when the people in charge can't be held accountable for their actions, they can do whatever they want and get away with anything they want. And they pressure the people that they're doing the wrong to stay quiet or to not talk about it, because those people are then afraid that authority is going to be used against them. And that's not okay anymore. It's never been okay, but now it's out there. We're talking about it, and it's good. To your point, it's good that we're talking about it. The conversation is happening, but we need to put action. Action needs to be taken. It's not enough to talk about it. What's going to change? And there's a lot of change that's going to happen within pro wrestling. And I don't know, fingers crossed, there's going to be a lot of change that's happening with the system. But the thing is, that's going to be a tough fight, because the people in charge of the system are rich, powerful, and they are going to be dragged from their positions kicking and screaming.
And that's true. But I want to touch on something because in talking about this, so we've got situations, and I know that you do a lot of personal, speaking and influencing people, right? So
Right.
on the Black Lives Matter front, you deal with folks that say, hey, there is no such thing as racism. It's not an issue. Not to get political, but you deal with some political parties that say no matter what our president does, he's right, no matter what happens. Now we're talking about the Speak Out movement, and people are going, well, the woman was, she claimed she was attacked 10 years ago. She didn't do anything then, but obviously it didn't happen. Or why is a guy automatically guilty? These kinds of things are these kind of thought processes that are very similar. How do you approach a person like this? I mean, how do you help to get them to see outside of these, their closeted way of thinking?
There's a lot of ugliness coming out in pro wrestling right now. And apparently it's happening in a bunch of other mediums of entertainment. It's coming out in gaming, it's coming out in comics. And it's a really pivotal time right now, I think, not just for pro wrestling, but in a lot of different areas. And it takes courage to have somebody speak out, as the hashtag is, speaking out. Like, they're coming forward with these stories that may have just happened, may have happened years ago, but for whatever reason, they may have been too afraid or pressured to not come forward with these stories. And it takes a lot of guts to get these stories out there because, like you said, we don't know what's true, what's not true. And it's hard to prove something when there is no proof, when it's just your word against somebody else's. But especially if you're if you're speaking out against people that are names in the business, you're putting yourself out there to catch a lot of flack from fans of this person who just don't want to hear it, who just immediately go to, oh, there's no way they could do that because they're a fan of this person. And again, that's like, you're putting yourself in front of the shooting gallery by speaking out against some of these superstars. And they're uncomfortable conversations, but just like with Black Lives Matter, these are conversations that we need to be having right now if progress is going to be made. They're uncomfortable, they're awkward, they're vulnerable, but this is what has to happen if we're going to improve, not just as a business in pro wrestling, not just with, like I said, comics and gaming, but as a society, as a people, as the human race. Like, the misconception is that there are different races within humanity. It's the human race. It's just one. And we're all in this together. And so if we don't have these conversations, nothing's going to change.
And we're actually going to, on a future episode, have some female wrestlers that have went through the speaking out situation, went through harassment and everything. But one of the young ladies, briefly, I was talking to earlier, was telling me her story. And she was assaulted by her trainer.
Ugh.
So as you just stated, she didn't want to speak on it because you had a dream to be a worker. You know what I mean? Then the person you go to as a young green bean is the one sending you pics. You know what I'm talking about. Sending you inappropriate text messages. And you laugh it off because you want to be a worker. You don't want to believe that it's like that. But then you look back, it was a terrible situation. So that's why, I'm glad it is coming out, as you said. And there's going to be a lot of change. There's going to be a lot of change in this business, man.
Right. It's not this carny BS is not okay anymore. And I've had nights where, it's never been that bad for me, but I've had nights where I've been peer pressured into hanging out with the boys after a show because that's what you're supposed to do. And that's not okay. It's like, if you want to go back to your hotel room and play video games, then do that. If you want to drive back after the show and not hang out with everybody, then do that. They are your coworkers. This is professional wrestling. Professional. And people are not taking the professional part seriously. They're using pro wrestling to try to hook up with somebody or to, looking to pro wrestling to find some friends. And that's okay if you befriend people in the business, but your coworkers have zero obligation to hang out with you after the show. Your students have zero obligation to flirt with you if you're lonely or horny or whatever the case is. There needs to be some accountability and people need to consider themselves professionals. And I understand pro wrestling was like the Wild West in the 80s, late 90s, early 2000s. It's not okay.
Y'all heard that. You heard it from AJ Kirsch, and you heard it from me. You heard it flat. All right, but before we get out of here, I want to talk about something else you did, man. So I'm on your Facebook, 2 Big Macs. 4 Big Macs, 4 fries, milkshakes. What was that all about? Now, I'm a competitive eater myself, but I'm like, well, damn. You said it was a CT Fletcher challenge. Talk to me, man.
All right. So those of you who don't know, CT Fletcher was like this monster back in his day. He had the world record for the strict curl. So like you're back against a wall. He strict curled the most weight in the world, drug-free, was just this massive, massive dude. And now he's this like, you know, motivational shit talking, just badass. So his lunch every day was 4 Big Macs, 4 large fries, 4 apple pies, and 2 shakes. And I'm an inner fat kid myself. I love to eat. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to see if I can do it. So I tried last year, failed, like did not finish. And I was like, okay, well, if I didn't get it last year, then I'm going to get it this year. So I tried again. This time I streamed it live on Twitch, which is where I do these at-home streaming workouts, twitch.tv/AJ Kirsch. Give me a follow. I'd really appreciate it. And I had people tip me as I went. It was like, you know, oh God, you guys, I'm getting kind of full. I need some motivation here. And 100% of the tips went to the People's Breakfast of Oakland, which is just this huge supporter of Black Lives Matter. And I did, again, this year I did not finish the meal. I failed. I ate 3.5 Big Macs, 2.5 orders of large fries, all 4 apple pies, and both shakes. So I got further along than I did last year, but I raised $1,000 even for the People's Breakfast of Oakland. And I thought I was going to be lucky to raise $100. I raised $1,000. So I can't be that upset about not finishing the meal when what started out as just a silly stunt on Twitch turned into like a very decent fundraising campaign. But there is a part of me that's a little disappointed I didn't finish the whole thing. I'm like, damn it, I got so close. I didn't quite get it. But you know what? After attempting it twice and getting a little further this time, I'm like, I'm very much okay with writing this off as a thing I just can't do. I'm okay with that. I do not want to try it a third time.
Whoa. Broseph Joe Brody is not a quitter. I'm calling it out. He's trying it again next year, y'all. I'm saying it. Whip Dog telling he's doing it.
I'm not saying it. I'm not saying you're saying it. I'm not saying it. I am not going to hold myself to that. We'll see what happens. A lot can happen between now and a year. We'll see what happens. But as of right now, I'm very okay throwing in the napkin.
See, and he's not giving in to peer pressure. See, he's taking his own medicine.
That's right.
Right there.
That's right.
He knows when to say no. Now, one question.
Last ride. He's good. He's good.
Right.
So now, one question. I mean, you've been doing a lot, you know, during that, you know, I guess probably at first when quarantine first happened, everybody's locked down, you're depressed, or you're not sure what to do, right? Now, as things go on long term, you got a lot going on, a lot of activity. Now quarantine's over, you know, we're free again. What do you got planned, you know, now that, you know, things are opening up? You know, what's the next steps in the coming months?
I'm trying to be patient as far as shows coming back. You know, I get chills every time I think about the first HoodSlam back or the first MLW, and the energy in those buildings is going to be absolutely amazing. But to be honest, the routine that I've kind of fallen into since shelter in place, I kind of plan on continuing and just adding shows and acting and voiceover gigs back into the fold. Like I've been very fortunate that my Twitch audience has kind of scratched that performer itch a little bit, because if we hit a certain point in tips with a workout, Broseph may come out and like finish the workout on my behalf. So it's like, I still get to kind of play that character from time to time. Twitch has been instrumental in keeping money coming in, which has been great. Those seminars have been a lot of fun to put together, and those are going to continue. So again, keep an eye on my social media for the next topic and when that's going to happen again. I love that I'm able to devote, like I said, time and attention into the causes that I believe in. So I don't see a whole lot changing once shelter in place and social distancing is no longer a thing. I like how I've adapted to the situation. I like how loud I'm being about the things that are important to me. And those are definitely going to continue moving forward.
I forgot to ask you earlier, and I want to ask you this before we get out of here. You got to be a part of Larry King Live and Ballers, which is my show, man. I love it.
Yeah.
How was both of those experiences, man?
Larry King I was super nervous until we started talking. Obviously, he is probably the best in the world at what he does. And so once the conversation was rolling, it was just like talking to somebody who was getting to know me. There just happened to be cameras around, and he just happened to be a legend. So it was a lot of fun to be able to do that. And Ballers is a funny story. So I'd already worked with Dwayne on Tough Enough and Rock the Promo. And I had gotten a gig as an extra on Ballers. And so I was just kind of like, oh, cool. Like, I wonder if he might be on set. I didn't know what the scene was, but it was shooting at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. And, I noticed that he was there. So I just kind of went up to him and was like, hey, DJ. And he turned around and he's like, oh, hey, what's up, man? I didn't know you'd be here. And we just, reconnected briefly. And then he was like, you know what? Why don't you, you're supposed to shoot today? I'm like, yeah. It's like, why don't you come back tonight? We're doing a scene at a bar, and we'll see if we can get you at the bar when I go up and order a drink. And so I was like, awesome. Absolutely. Yes, please. So I actually went home that day, just killed some time, and then went back to the Fairmont that night when they shot the scene. And lo and behold, there's 3 seconds there where I'm asking for a drink at the bar, and The Rock comes up and orders a drink himself. So it was really cool to not only that he would remember me from Tough Enough and Rock the Promo, but that he would kind of go out of his way a little bit for me to get a couple seconds of screen time with him.
Dopeness. Well, Daryl, do you got anything else for him before we get him out of here, man? Because he's a busy man.
One last question. When you're working with The Rock, is he towering over you? Are you talking about being mark out moments? Is this one of them?
Yes and no. And the reason it's a yes, obviously, is because it's Dwayne Johnson. He's a phenomenon. He's a big dude. He's probably legit 6'4" and probably 260, 270. He is as jacked as he looks. But the reason it's a no is because he was just so easy to talk to, so down to earth, so humble, hardworking. He just made it really easy to make it feel like I was just talking to another hardworking dude and not Dwayne Johnson. So, and I think it's a credit to his character about how he carries himself. During Rock the Promo, we shot that in Vegas, the finale, in this tiny little boxing gym. And when he came, everybody knows who Dwayne Johnson is, but when he came in, he went around and introduced himself to everybody at the gym, all the camera people, all the people that were there to help out from the gym, everybody. And I think that's a reflection of wrestling etiquette, which is what you do when you're in the locker room. You shake hands with everybody, regardless of how often you've seen them, regardless of when the last time you saw them was. That's just part of wrestling etiquette. And that's something I think wrestling does really well, and something that was really refreshing to see that Dwayne continues to do, even though he is a legit superstar. I think wrestling can be its own worst enemy. And I also think wrestling's what some people write off as traditions, right? Shutting your mouth, doing what you're told. You're basically at the whim of your trainers. You're at the whim of the veterans who grew up at a different time and were kind of brought up a little bit differently than everybody else was. And I think now more than ever is the time, as the hashtag says, to speak out if something doesn't feel okay. And it's not in the trainer's position to say you shouldn't speak out about that. If it's in the trainer's position to say, well, let's talk about it. How do we make, if I'm doing something that's bothering you, then let's talk about it. It's not shut your mouth, you greenhorn, you don't know what you're talking about, pay your dues and protect the business and all this other garbage that goes with generations and generations of pro wrestling. That's that's never, I hate to repeat myself, but it's never been okay. But the fact that we're talking about it right now is absolutely huge. And that's why I'm just in awe of the courage that it takes for people to speak out when they have every reason, maybe up to this point, that they felt like they shouldn't. And It's uncomfortable conversations, but they need to happen if we're going to move forward. It's uncomfortable to have conversations about race and how institutionalized it is in the United States, but nothing's going to change until we have these conversations. So it's a really pivotal time right now, not just in wrestling, but in the course of American history.
For sure, for sure. Well, AJ, I know you're busy, man. We're going to get you on out of here, but this final segment is called Ring the Bell. That means you got 60 seconds to talk about whatever. You can talk about whatever. You can just shout people out, but you got 60 seconds. AJ, ring the bell.
I appreciate it. Ding, ding, ding. I appreciate it, y'all. I appreciate you inviting me to be on this podcast. And I've actually turned a lot of podcasts down lately because this may not be a popular opinion, but I've kind of enjoyed my time away from wrestling. I've enjoyed being able to rest, reflect, refocus how I want to spend my time and energy, and realize that I'm okay being away from wrestling right now. And so the fact that everything is kind of lined up the way it did with being away from wrestling, but also having the Black Lives Matter movement just surge, having speaking out pop up within wrestling has helped me realize that there are far more important issues at hand that need people to raise their voice and not be afraid to stand by what they believe and to stand by the people that mean the most to them. And so it's a very unique opportunity, and I'm glad to have come on your podcast to not only discuss my career and the fun stuff throughout my career, but stress how important it is that we speak up about what we believe in and what we think is right.
That's what's up, man. I hope we did you right, man.
You did. I'm again very grateful to be here, and I had a blast. So thank you guys for making this a lot of fun for me.
For sure. All right, AJ, we'll talk to you later, man. Take care, bro.
Take care, y'all. Be safe.
For sure. Daryl, we had another great one, man. That one came with some information.
Another great guest, man. Each and every week, it just gets better. And I appreciate, all the motivation that he's doing online and using social media. I really love what he's doing out there.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate that very much.
For sure. Well, guys, we're out of here. Another episode in the books, the Wrestling Heroes and Insiders Podcast, a.k.a. The Whip Show. You know what to do. Follow us on Instagram at The Whip Show Podcast, YouTube, The Whip Show Podcast, or on Anchor or wherever you follow your platforms for podcasting, The Whip Show Podcast. For Deshaun, Whip Dog Whipple, and
Devastating Daryl Pace.
And AJ Kirsch. We out of here. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care, y'all.